Hi, it's Mr. Bernay. I wanted to take you through these ratios and proportions notes. So I've already made the foldables, but you can see how I made them. I just took a strip of paper, cut it and folded it like a hot dog fold, like a hot dog bun for both of these. And then I also made the foldable down here, which looks like this. So I'll go over each one. So please make sure you title your notes, ratios, and proportions. You date them and also put a page number. So we start off with three definitions. So we have the definition for ratio right here, which this is also in your slideshow that you can see. But I'll show you what I have here. It looks like I've misspelled a word, of course. So the definition for ratio, put an extra E in there for some reason, is the relationship between two numbers. So there are four ways to write a ratio. One is like this, where you have the colon in between. So this says 1 to 4, basically. So 1 colon 4. There's also a fraction, 1 over 4, which is the same as this decimal, 0.25, which is the same as this percent, 25%. And actually, I'm going to add another one. Another one you might see is when it's written out 1 to 4. So this and this mean the same thing. They all mean the same thing. These are different ways to write out a ratio. All right, which means the relationship between two numbers. So make sure you get the definition and all those examples in your notebook, in this foldable. All right, and then the second vocab word is proportions. So proportions are two ratios set equal to one another. So I give the example of 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6. So these are basically equivalent fractions. You can see what the multiplier is. You have to multiply 1 times 2 to get to 2, 3 times 2 to get to 6. But the problems that we'll see, the proportion problems that we'll see, actually have missing numbers. So it'll look something like 1/3 equals x over 6. So here you have to figure out what x equals. Many of you will see that since you have to multiply 3 times 2 to get 6, you also have to do the same thing to the numerator. 1 times 2 get you that 2 that you're looking for. However, when the numbers get bigger and when we start seeing decimals in the fractions and variables in the fractions, it'll be a little more difficult to just look at and see what the multiplier is and figure it out that way. So we'll get into how we figure out those types of problems in just a minute through cross multiplication. But there is one more vocab word that you want to get down, and that is this one here, unit rate. So a unit rate is just like a ratio, except for this is a rate with a denominator of 1. So like these ratios up here, like this one has a denominator of 4. That's not a unit rate because the denominator is 4, not 1. So a unit rate is a rate with a denominator of 1. And I'll explain further what that means and why that's significant. So make sure you get all three of these definitions down. Ratio, proportion, unit rate. Alright, so the next foldable looks like this. So it's just a piece of paper folded like so. And it's kind of a hint to how to do this cross multiplication. So if you see a proportion, which this is a proportion, because a proportion is two ratios set equal to one another. If you see a proportion and you have, like what I showed you up here, a missing number, to find that missing number, what you have to do to solve is to do some cross multiplication. So A times D is equal to B times C. A times D is equal to B times C. Cross multiplication. And we will look at a couple examples of how to do that over here on the right side. So for now, just get that foldable, and it'll make more sense to you once I show you some of these examples here on the right side of your notebook. Alright, so again, same as the left side, the right side of the notebook, all these pictures are in the slideshow, so you can go back and refer to those if you'd like. There's a picture in the slideshow. I tried my best to recreate that jar of mayo that you see. You do the same. You can draw a picture. Anyway, so this is from an ad, a grocery store ad for a jar of mayo, and the jar of mayo is 30 ounces, a little less than 2 pounds. It's a lot of mayo. And 30 ounces of mayo at the grocery store costs $2.19. So what we want to know is the unit price. And remember, we said over here the unit rate is a rate with a denominator of 1. So unit price means how much per whatever the measurement is. In this case, it's per ounce. So we're trying to figure out how much money does it cost per ounce of mayonnaise. And we can solve that question with a proportion. So the proportion looks like this. We know that it costs $2.19 for 30 ounces because that's the information that we were given on the ad. And the question we're wanting to know is how much for 1 ounce. So if I covered this answer up right here, so if we didn't know that it cost 7 cents per ounce, the way that you would solve this problem is through cross multiplication. So you would take 219 times 1, 219 times 1 on one side, and then on the other side, since you don't know this yet, call this x. This would be 30 times x. Alright, so 219 times 1 is just 219. So 219 equals 30x. And then to find our missing number, we have to divide by 30 because that's the opposite of multiply by 30. So 219 divided by 30, we get x equals 0.07, which means 7 cents. So that's how you figure out how much per ounce. You set up your proportion. Again, you know that it costs $2.19 for 30 ounces of mayo. You're wondering how much does it cost per 1 ounce. So x is the cost. We don't know how much the cost is, but we know that we want to know how much 1 ounce costs. When you set up a proportion, make sure that you keep your units consistent. So here I had ounces in the denominator, so I'm over here. So I'm going to want ounces in the denominator over here. On top, in the numerator, I had dollars on the left side, or on top of the numerator. So on the right side, I also want dollars and cents. So that's how you solve a problem like that for unit price. Okay, so these down here are similar. These are proportions. This is a problem that you might see. So 5 over 6 is the ratio, is equal to some number over 9. And again, it's hard. Like over here, you can tell what this multiplier is. You can tell that you have to multiply 1 times 2 to get to 2, 3 times 2 to get to 6. But over here, it's not as easy. What do you have to multiply 6 by to get to 9? It's not as easy to tell. So we have to do our cross multiplication. So we're going to do 5 times 9, which is 45. I'll write it out. 5 times 9 is 45. And 6 times c on the other side. So that's what we get so far. 45 on one side and 6c on the other side. We multiplied 5 times 9 and then 6 times c. Cross multiply. Now the next step, because we're trying to solve for c, we're trying to figure out what c equals up here, is to divide by 6. So we're going to do that on both sides. And you get 7.5. 45 divided by 6 is 7.5. So our missing number c up here is 7.5. So that makes this proportion equivalent. 7.5 over 9 is the same thing as 5 over 6. And you can prove that by turning these into decimals. 5 divided by 6 is the same as 7.5 divided by 9. So these should be equivalent statements. Proportions should be equal to one another. Two ratios that are equal to one another. Alright, and then the last problem. Now we have a variable being added to something in the numerator. But we still cross multiply. So this is a proportion. X plus 3 over 4 is equal to 7 over 8. So again, we're going to cross multiply. So x plus 3 times 8 looks like this. Eight times x plus 3. And then 4 times 7 on the other side. 4 times 7 is 28. And then to solve the left side, all we have to do is distribute. So 8x plus 24. And that's what now we have a two-step equation. So all we've done so far is cross-multiplied and then simplified down to this. So now we have a two-step equation. So we have to isolate the variable, subtract 24 from both sides, 4 on one side, 8x on the other, divide by 8. That's the opposite of multiply by 8. So we get x equals 4 divided by 8, which is the same thing as 1/2. So x equals 1/2. So that's our answer for this one. Alright, so that is how you solve a proportion through cross multiplication. So make sure you get those examples down in your notebooks. These two, as well as the unit rate example. And then on the left side, make sure you have all three definitions and you finish this foldable. You can rewind, go back and pause the video if you'd like, and also take a look at the PowerPoint on Google Classroom. Good luck.